Welcome back to State and Local Government and Politics, Module 6, Legislatures, Part 2, State Legislatures. All of the U.S. states have a popularly elected legislative branch, and each state constitution specifies the essential features of the composition and method of organization of state legislative bodies. State legislatures are the primary lawmaking bodies of the American government, and they are quite similar in structure to the U.S. Congress. The legislature, in all cases, is a multi-member body of popularly elected representatives. In 49 states, the legislature is divided into two houses, generally a Senate and a House of Representatives, called the House of Delegates in Virginia, just as in the U.S. Congress. Only Nebraska features a unicameral or one-chamber legislature. The upper house, or Senate, is usually significantly smaller than the lower house, which in most states is called the House of Representatives. Senators are most often elected for 4-year terms, but some states elect their senators every 2 years. State representatives usually are elected for 2-year terms. In many states, constitutional term limits control the number of terms, consecutive or otherwise, which a legislator can serve. Most states dictate that each legislative electoral district will elect only one representative and only one senator. However, 8 states do allow multi-member districts, wherein voters can elect more than one representative for the lower house of the state legislature. Nearly all the American states adopted the bicameral legislature in major part because they wished to allow landowners a major voice in government disproportionate to their number in the electorate. Senators were once elected by county or groups of counties, as opposed to population, in a manner like the U.S. Senate's apportionment of 2 senators per state, regardless of the size of its population. In 1962, Baker v. Carr, and again in 1964, Reynolds v. Sim, however, the United States Supreme Court agreed to hear cases wherein it was argued that Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution required that the principle of one person, one vote should apply to both houses of American state legislatures. It was reasoned by lawyers arguing for a fundamental change in the organization of state legislatures that the U.S. Congress organized membership around the principle of representation by geography, because it is a federal system in which individual states pre-existed the establishment of the United States of America. In the case of the U.S. states, however, they are each a unitary government wherein all citizens, regardless of where they reside, city, suburb, or rural area, are entitled to equal representation. The U.S. Supreme Court determined in these landmark cases that both chambers of the American state legislatures must be based on population alone. The initial result of these decisions was that the state legislatures redrew their upper chamber legislative district lines to reflect the population, causing many more legislators to be representing urban areas in the upper chamber of American state governments. These legislative districts must be redistricted every 10 years when the U.S. Census is taken to assure that they conform to the equal representation, one person, one vote standard as closely as possible. While the manifest intent of redistricting is to ensure equal representation in the government, the process of drawing legislative district lines is the responsibility of state legislatures and tends to become highly politicized and partisan in nature in those states which do not establish an independent, bipartisan body to carry out redistricting. In fact, a number of state district lines are commonly redrawn to maximize the strength of the majority party and weaken the minority party in a process known as gerrymandering. As the process of gerrymandering indicates, political parties play a very important role in state legislatures. The majority party typically organizes the election of the leader of the lower house, the House Speaker in most cases, and in most states the leader of the upper house, typically the Senate Majority Leader, is put into office based on a partisan vote. The party leadership in both chambers generally appoints legislators to their committee assignments, designates committee chairs in the case of the majority party, and typically controls floor activity tightly. As a result of these decisions, influenced greatly by the majority political party, a relatively small number of key legislators in control of the legislative house typically dominate the agenda and the content of bills heard during a legislative session. The powers of state legislatures universally include modifying existing laws and making new statutes, developing the state government's budget, confirming the executive appointments brought before the legislature, impeaching governors, and removing from office other members of the executive branch. The three major functions performed by the state legislatures collectively are representation, lawmaking, and balancing the power of the executive or oversight. In Part 3 of this module on legislatures, we'll discuss representation.